Hello everyone, today Biker with a Heart bring you a story full of humanity and compassion. We hope you enjoy listening.
The fluorescent lights buzzed like distant thunder over the worn linoleum floor of the highway diner, a forgotten speck on the edge of Route 66, where truckers nursed black coffee and the air hung heavy with the scent of sizzling grease and faded dreams. It was a slow Tuesday night in the dusty outskirts of nowhere, the kind where the horizon bled into endless black, and the only company was the hum of neon signs flickering open 24/7. Behind the counter, Sarah wiped down the sticky surface for the third time, her hands moving on autopilot. At 32, she carried the weight of a life pieced together from shattered edges. A divorce that left her with nothing but a locket etched with a promise she could no longer remember, and scars from a childhood where silence was both refuge and curse. Her dark hair was pulled back in a practical ponytail, and her uniform, faded blue with the diner's logo peeling at the edges, clung to her like an old regret. The door chime jingled sharply, cutting through the quiet like a knife, and stumbled a boy, no older than 10, his small frame trembling under a threadbare jacket too big for him. His eyes, wide and unblinking, darted around the empty booths, but there was no sound from him, no cry for help, no plea. He was deaf, Sarah realized instantly, the way his lips moved in silent desperation, forming words that echoed only in his mind. Bruises bloomed purple on his arms, visible where his sleeve rode up, and his cheeks were streaked with dirt and tears that he couldn't voice. He clutched a crumpled napkin, scribbling frantically with a stubby pencil. "Help! Mom's sick! Bad men!" The words were jagged, born of fear. Before Sarah could move, the door slammed open again, harder this time, letting in a gust of desert wind that carried the metallic tang of impending rain. 3 men in grease-stained overalls barreled in, their laughter coarse and mocking, boots thudding against the floor like judgments. They were locals, the kind who owned the night in these parts, roughnecks from the oil fields, faces hardened by sun and spite. The biggest one, with a beard like tangled wire, spotted the boy immediately. "Hey, kid, you running from us again? Thought we told you to stay put." His voice boomed, laced with false joviality that twisted into something darker. The boy froze, backing against the counter, his body language screaming what his voice couldn't. Terror, pure and raw. Sarah's heart slammed in her chest, a familiar ache rising like bile. She remembered her own brother, lost to the silence of the world years ago, taken by a system that chewed up the vulnerable and spat out ghosts. No, not again. She stepped forward, her voice steady despite the tremor in her hands. "He's just a kid. Leave him be." The men turned, sizing her up with smirks that curdled the air. "Mind your business, sweetheart," the leader snarled, reaching for the boy. "This ain't your fight." But Sarah didn't back down. She placed herself between them, her eyes locking onto the man's with a fire she'd buried deep. "It is now. You touch him, and I'll call the sheriff. Or better yet, every soul who knows what real justice looks like." The diner fell silent, save for the sizzle of the grill and the boys' ragged breaths. The men hesitated, their bravado cracking under her unyielding gaze. One muttered something about crazy waitress, but they retreated, shoving out the door with curses that faded into the night. Sarah knelt then, gently taking the napkin from the boy's shaking hands. "You're safe," she whispered, though she knew he couldn't hear. She signed it instead, basic gestures she'd learned from old videos, hoping they conveyed the warmth she felt blooming in her chest, a spark of purpose amid the ruins of her life. The boy nodded, relief washing over his face like dawn breaking. His name, he wrote, was Ethan. His mother was ill, hidden away in a rundown trailer on the outskirts, and these men, Corrupt enforcers for a shady land developer were pressuring them to sell their plot, the last tie to a life unmarred by greed. Ethan's father had been a veteran, killed in some forgotten conflict, leaving behind a promise scrawled in a letter: protect what's ours, no matter the cost. Sarah read the words, and something stirred. An echo of her own forgotten vow, made to her brother under a starlit sky, to stand for the voiceless. She didn't know it yet, but that moment would ripple outward, pulling threads from her past into the present. As the clock ticked past midnight, Sarah sat with Ethan in a corner booth, sharing fries and sketching a plan on napkins. She called a friend at the local clinic, arranging a discreet visit for his mum. But word travels fast in places like this, carried on the wind and the whispers of the road. By morning, a murmur had spread through the network of those who lived by codes unspoken, a convoy of shadows gathering on the fringes. James Hawk Harlan, a weathered biker in his late 40s, heard the story from a trucker at a gas station stop. Hawk's leather vest bore patches from the Iron Promise MC, a brotherhood forged in the fires of war and loss. His face, lined with the ghosts of battles abroad and betrayals at home, tightened as he listened. He'd lost his hearing in one ear to a roadside bomb years back, a secret he guarded like a wound. Defending a deaf kid. That hit close, stirring the old promise he'd made to his fallen squad. We ride for the forgotten. Hawk fired up his Harley, the engine roaring to life like a beast awakening. He radioed his crew, veterans, mechanics, souls bound by loyalty thicker than blood. Brothers, he growled into the comms, there's a promise calling. We ride at dawn. The diner, that humble beacon, would soon swell with the thunder of engines, a testament to justice not in fists, but in presence. Sarah, unaware, tucked Ethan into a blanket, her resolve hardening. In the quiet hours before the storm, she touched the locket at her throat, whispering to the empty air, I remember now. Outside, the first hints of pink streaked the sky, and the distant rumble began. A symphony of redemption rolling in from the horizon. What started as one woman's stand was about to become a legend of chosen kin, where honor outshone corruption, and a single act of courage summoned the guardians of the road. The air thickened with the promise of change, the kind that echoes through canyons and hearts alike. Word count 872. The first rays of dawn sliced through the diner's fogged windows like golden blades, painting the chrome stools in hues of amber and casting long shadows across the checkered floor. Sarah glanced at the clock. 5:47 Mbin, its hands ticking with the relentless rhythm of a heartbeat she couldn't ignore. Ethan slept fitfully in the booth, his small chest rising and falling under the borrowed jacket she'd draped over him like a shield. The air inside still carried the faint aroma of cooled coffee and bacon grease, but outside the world stirred with an unfamiliar growl, low and insistent, vibrating through the walls like the earth's own warning. She'd barely closed her eyes, her mind replaying the night's chaos, the boys' silent pleas, the men's retreating glares, the weight of that crumpled letter from Ethan's father. It mirrored her own locket's inscription, a faded engraving from her brother, stand for the silent or fall with the cowards. She'd buried that vow after his disappearance, chalking it up to the cruelties of a foster system that promised care but delivered indifference. But now, with Ethan beside her, it clawed its way back, demanding reckoning. Sarah poured herself a fresh cup of coffee, the steam curling like ghosts in the chill morning air, and stepped to the door, peering into the gathering light. The rumble grew, no longer distant but swelling, a chorus of thunder rolling across the cracked asphalt of the parking lot. Headlights pierced the haze, one by one, until a line of motorcycles stretched like a steel serpent from the horizon. Harleys mostly, their engines purring with the deep timbre of loyalty forged in fire. The lead bike pulled up first, its rider dismounting with the grace of a man who'd stared down worse than desert dawns. James Hawk Harlan, though everyone just called him Hawk, cut the ignition, the sudden silence amplifying the crunch of his boots on gravel. His face, weathered by sun-scorched patrols and the shrapnel of forgotten wars, bore the faint scar of a healed wound across his jaw. The iron promise patch on his vest gleamed dully, a symbol of oaths sworn in blood and chrome. Hawk's crew followed, 20 strong at first, then more. Veterans with tattoos mapping battles abroad, mechanics whose hands smelled of oil and resolve. A few women who'd traded nursing scrubs for leather jackets, all bound by the creed of the road. They parked in a protective arc around the diner, engines dying one by one, leaving only the soft hiss of cooling metal and the whisper of wind through spokes. No one spoke loudly. These were men and women who understood that true strength arrived without fanfare, a quiet flood to drown out corruption's roar. Sarah's hand tightened on the doorframe, her pulse quickening. She'd heard tales of the iron promise, whispers from truckers about a brotherhood that rode for the overlooked, honoring promises that the law forgot. But seeing them here, helmets tucked under arms, faces etched with quiet determination, made her breath catch. Hawk approached, his single good ear attuned to the world's subtleties, the other a reminder of the blast that had stolen sound and nearly his soul. "Heard about the kid," he said, his voice gravel rough but kind, eyes flicking to the window where Ethan stirred. "And the stand you took. Name's Hawk. We don't let that slide." Inside, the diner transformed. The bikers filed in orderly, filling booths and stools without a word of demand. Their presence a wall against the encroaching day. Sarah nodded, gesturing to the coffee pot. "Help yourselves, it's on the house." They did, murmuring thanks. Their orders simple: black coffee, eggs over easy, the kind of meal that fueled long rides. One, a burly man named Lucas with a prosthetic leg from the same war that scarred Hawk, knelt by Ethan's booth. He pulled out a small notepad, sketching a quick thumbs up and a motorcycle, his broad smile bridging the silence. Ethan woke, eyes widening not in fear but wonder, his fingers tracing the drawing as if it were a map to safety. As plates clattered and conversations hummed low, Hawk slid into the stool across from Sarah, his gaze steady. The boy's story, those men, they're tied to Harlan Development. Shady outfit pushing folks off their land for some pipeline deal. Ethan's mom. She's got ties to a plot they want. We know the type. Pressure, threats, all under the guise of progress. He paused, sipping his coffee, the steam veiling his eyes. "Reminds me of a promise I made overseas. Squad got hit. I pulled one brother out but lost the rest. Swore I'd never leave the voiceless behind again. This crew, we're that oath on wheels." Sarah felt the locket warm against her skin, as if her brother's words echoed Hawk's. She'd called the clinic friend at dawn. A nurse named Grace was en route to the trailer, slipping in under the radar to check on Ethan's mom, without alerting the enforcers. But as the sun climbed, casting the diner in a warm glow that belied the tension, a shadow loomed. Tires screeched outside, a black SUV, dust swirling in its wake. The 3 men from last night spilled out, flanked by 2 more in suits, their faces slick with false authority. The leader, beard still tangled, banged on the door, his voice muffled but venomous. "Open up! That kid's coming with us! Social services say so!" The bikers didn't rise en masse. They didn't need to. Hawk stood slowly, his shadow stretching across the floor like a challenge. Sarah moved to Ethan's side, signing, "Stay strong," with hands that no longer trembled. Lucas and a few others flanked the door, their presence a silent decree. This ground was held. The banging intensified, but so did the low murmur from the crew. Stories shared in hushed tones of similar stands, of lands saved and families preserved through sheer will and unity. Hawk cracked the door, his frame blocking the threshold. "Sheriff's on his way," he lied smoothly, though a call had been placed to a sympathetic deputy who owed the club a favor. But before that, you got a choice. Walk away, or explain why a sick woman and her boy deserve your kind of help. The leader sneered, but his eyes darted to the sea of leather inside, the unyielding wall of faces that spoke of consequences beyond bruises. Tension coiled like a spring, the air thick with the scent of exhaust and unspoken threats. Sarah watched, heart pounding, as the first cracks of doubt appeared in the men's bravado. Minutes stretched like hours, the diner's clock ticking onward. Grace's van arrived discreetly from the side road, slipping away with Ethan and a hastily packed bag. His mum stabilized enough for a quiet transfer to a safe house run by the club's network. The enforcers, sensing the tide turn, retreated with grumbled warnings, their SUV kicking up gravel as it fled. But Hawk knew it wasn't over. Harlan Development's reach was long, their corruption a web that ensnared the local law. As the bikers settled back, sharing nods of quiet victory, Sarah felt the stirrings of something profound, a family forged in the moment, bound by promises that outlasted the dawn. Outside, more engines rumbled in the distance, reinforcements swelling the ranks to nearly 50. The diner, once empty, now pulsed with life, a bastion against the greed that clawed at the edges of decency. Hawk turned to Sarah, a faint smile cracking his stoic mask. "You started this ride. We're just along for the miles." In that shared glance, vows intertwined, hers to the silent, his to the road, setting the stage for a confrontation that would test every thread of loyalty. The sun rose higher, bathing the lot in light, but shadows lingered, promising trials yet to come. The midday sun beat down on the highway diner like a relentless interrogator, turning the asphalt into a shimmering mirage that blurred the line between heat and haze. Inside, the air conditioner hummed a futile battle against the warmth seeping through the windows, carrying with it the faint, acrid scent of cooling engines and sun-baked leather. Sarah stood behind the counter, her hands steady as she refilled coffee mugs for the bikers who lingered like sentinels, their conversation a low rumble that filled the space without overwhelming it. Ethan was gone now, whisked away with Grace to a quiet cabin on the club's outskirts, where his mother could recover under watchful eyes. But the victory felt fragile, like a truce in a storm that hadn't fully passed. Sarah's locket hung heavy against her collarbone, a talisman reminding her that promises, once awakened, demanded more than a single stand. Hawk nursed his third cup of black coffee, his gaze fixed on the horizon where the enforcer's SUV had vanished hours earlier. The scar on his jaw caught the light, a silvery reminder of the explosion that had not only dulled his hearing, but shattered his faith in systems meant to protect. Back in the war, he'd watched brothers fall to chaos that no uniform could contain, vowing in the rubble to build something unbreakable, a brotherhood where the overlooked found armor. The iron promise had grown from that dust, a network of riders who intervened not with fury, but with the unyielding weight of presence. "They'll be back," Hawk said quietly to Sarah, his voice cutting through the clink of silverware. "Harlan Development doesn't fold easy. They've got the sheriff's ear, greased with promises of jobs that never come." Sarah nodded, wiping a spill that wasn't there, her mind racing through the fragments of Ethan's story. The boy's father, a veteran like Hawk, had left behind not just land, but a legacy of quiet defiance, a small plot on the edge of town, rich with memories, and now eyed for a pipeline that would scar the earth and displace families like his. The developers' tactics were subtle poisons, veiled threats, falsified documents, a pressure on the vulnerable until they broke or fled. It echoed her own past, the foster homes where authorities turned blind eyes to the signs of neglect, leaving her brother to vanish into the system's indifferent maw. She'd promised him safety once, under a flickering porch light, but life had eroded that oath until Ethan reignited it. "What do we do?" she asked, her voice a thread of resolve, weaving into the diner's hum. Before Hawk could answer, the door chime rang out, sharp and intrusive. A woman in her late 50s entered, her steps measured but urgent, a worn cardigan draped over shoulders that carried the invisible burden of years. Grace, the nurse who'd handled Ethan's mother's transfer, had returned with news that tightened every jaw in the room. She slid into a booth beside Lucas, who offered her a plate of untouched pie with a gentle nod. "The mom's stable," Grace whispered, her eyes scanning the faces around her. Familiar ones from past rides, souls she'd patched up after scrapes with the road or the law. "Fever's down, but she's scared. Says the developers sent papers yesterday, claiming the land's eminent domain. Lies, all of it. But the boy's aunt, distant kin, got wind and called in favors. That's how the story reached you all." Hawk's fist clenched around his mug, the ceramic creaking under the pressure. The aunt was Olivia, a name that stirred old currents in the club's lore. She'd been a nurse in the same field hospital where Hawk had lain, half deaf and broken after the blast. Olivia had signed to him in those hazy days, simple gestures that bridged his silence, reminding him of the world's hidden languages. Her own son, deaf from birth, had been lost to a custody battle years back, twisted by corrupt officials who favored deep pockets over fragile bonds. She joined the Iron Promise's extended family after that, vowing to shield the voiceless, much like the promise Hawk carried. "Olivia's call," he murmured, piecing it together. "She heard from the clinic grapevine. This isn't just about one plot anymore." The revelation rippled through the group like a shared pulse. Lucas leaned in, his prosthetic leg shifting with a soft click against the booth. "We've tangled with Harlan before. Last year, they pushed a widow off her farm, same playbook. We rode in, filled the town hall till the suits backed off. But this time, they've got a judge in pocket, falsifying records to paint Ethan's mom as unfit." His words hung heavy, evoking the moral quagmire that tested the club's code. Justice not through retaliation, but through exposure, forcing the corrupt to face the light of truth. Sarah felt a surge of connection, these strangers knitting into the family she'd long forsaken. She stepped away from the counter, joining the booth, her uniform a stark contrast to the leather around her. "I know a guy at the county office, old school friend Benjamin. He handles records. If we can get eyes on those documents—" Her voice trailed, but Hawk's nod sealed it, a silent pact forming. The plan unfolded in hushed tones. A small team would ride to the office under cover of afternoon traffic, while others stood guard at the safe house. Grace would document the medical side, building a case of coercion veiled as care. As the bikers mobilized, the diner emptied in waves, engines firing up outside with a symphony that drowned the desert's whisper. Sarah watched from the window, the sun glinting off chrome like sparks of defiance. But as the last bike pulled away, a new shadow crept in, a patrol car idling at the lot's edge, its lights off, but presence ominous. The sheriff, a man whose badge had long served Harlan's interests, stepped out, his uniform crisp against the dust. He approached the door slowly, eyes narrowing at the fading taillights. "Miss," he drawled upon entering, the scent of stale cigar trailing him. "We need to talk about that boy. Reports of disturbance. Social services is involved." Sarah's heart raced, but she held her ground, the locket's weight grounding her. Disturbance or just folks standing up? The sheriff's smirk faltered, sensing the shift. The diner no longer solitary, its walls echoing with the promise of return. Outside, the rumble lingered in the air, a vow that the ride was far from over. Hawk's crew was en route, threads of loyalty pulling tighter, ready to unravel the web of deceit. In that charged moment, Sarah realized her stand had summoned not just guardians, but a reckoning, one where redemption bloomed from the ashes of old silences, and honor rode shotgun against the tide of corruption. The afternoon stretched, tension coiling like dust devils on the horizon, as alliances deepened and shadows lengthened toward the inevitable clash. The sheriff's boots scraped against the diner's threshold like gravel under tires, each step echoing in the sudden hush that fell over the empty space. Sarah stood frozen behind the counter, the coffee pot still in her grip, its warmth seeping through the handle like a fleeting comfort. The air inside thickened with the scent of his cigar smoke, mingling with the lingering aroma of pie crust and engine oil from the departed bikers. Outside, the patrol car's engine idled low, a predatory purr against the vast afternoon sky, where clouds gathered like unspoken accusations on the horizon. His eyes, sharp and unyielding beneath the brim of his hat, swept the room, noting the scattered mugs and the faint imprints of boots on the linoleum, evidence of the morning's unlikely assembly. "Name's Harlan Tate," he said, his voice a slow drawl, laced with authority that rang hollow to Sarah's ears. He removed his hat, revealing a forehead creased by years of turning blind eyes to the town's underbelly. Tate was no stranger to the highway diner. He'd nursed coffees here on quieter nights, trading nods with truckers while ignoring the whispers of land grabs that lined his pockets. But today, his posture carried an edge, the weight of Harlan Development's invisible leash pulling taut. "That boy, Ethan, was it? Social services got a tip. Unfit guardian, potential endangerment. You wouldn't want to complicate things by harboring him." Sarah set the pot down with deliberate calm, her fingers brushing the locket at her throat, where her brother's promise pulsed like a second heartbeat. She'd seen men like Tate before, facades of justice masking the rot beneath, the kind that had swallowed her family whole. "Complicate or clarify," she replied, her tone even, eyes locking onto his without flinching. The diner, bathed in the slanting light of mid-afternoon, felt smaller now, its walls pressing in as if holding its breath. She thought of Ethan, safe for the moment in the cabin's quiet embrace, his mother's frail hand signing stories of a father who rode the roads before the war claimed him. That legacy, fragile as it was, deserved more than bureaucratic erasure. Tate leaned on the counter, his shadow stretching across the faded menu board like a claim staked in darkness. "Look, miss, I'm just doing my job. Developers need that land for progress, jobs, infrastructure. The boy's mom, she's got debts, health issues, papers are filed, it's clean." But his words faltered, the lie tasting sour even to him, as distant thunder rumbled, vibrating the windows like a warning from the gathering storm. Sarah knew better. Benjamin, her old friend at the county office, had texted minutes ago, a hasty message confirming the documents were riddled with forgeries, timestamps manipulated to paint a picture of neglect that never existed. Before she could press, the door swung open again, admitting a gust of hot wind laced with the metallic tang of ozone. Lucas returned alone, his motorcycle parked discreetly out back, the prosthetic leg giving his stride a subtle hitch that spoke of battles won and lost. He'd been part of the team dispatched to Benjamin's office, slipping in through a side entrance, while Hawk and the others circled the perimeter. Lucas's face, broad and scarred from shrapnel that mirrored Hawk's own wounds, carried a grim satisfaction. He nodded to Sarah, and then fixed Tate with a stare that needed no words, the quiet authority of a man who'd pulled brothers from fire, vowing never to yield ground to shadows. Tate straightened, sensing the shift, his hand drifting toward his belt out of habit. "What's this? Back up for the waitress?" Lucas didn't rise to the bait. Instead, he pulled a folded sheaf of papers from his jacket, the edges crisp against the diner's worn aesthetic. "County records," he said simply, sliding them across the counter. Benjamin pulled them. Signatures don't match, dates off by weeks. Your clean case. It's a house of cards. The sheriff's color drained, the documents fanning out like accusations under the fluorescent glow, proof of the web Harlan development had spun, with Tate as its reluctant thread. The revelation hung in the air, thick as the impending rain, forcing Tate to confront the mirror of his choices. He'd started as a deputy with ideals, promising his own late father, a rancher squeezed out by similar greed, to uphold the little guy's fight. But years of backroom deals had eroded that oath, leaving him adrift in a sea of justifications. Now, faced with Lucas's unblinking gaze and Sarah's quiet defiance, cracks formed in his resolve. This ain't how it works, he muttered, but his voice lacked conviction, the storm outside mirroring the turmoil within. Sarah watched, her heart aching not with triumph but empathy. The redemption she sought for herself extended like an olive branch, unspoken. Lucas stepped closer, his presence a bridge between confrontation and accord. It can work different. Walk away from this, Tate. Help us expose it. Ethan's dad was one of us. Veteran. Promised his family the ground they stood on. You got a chance to honor something real. The words landed like rain on parched earth, stirring the sheriff's buried vow. He glanced at the papers, then out the window, where more bikes approached in the distance. Hawk's reinforcements, engines harmonizing with the thunder, swelling the horizon like a tide of loyalty. Tate's shoulders sagged, the weight of corruption lifting fractionally as he pocketed a burner phone, murmuring about making calls that might unravel the developer's grip. As he retreated to his cruiser, the first drops pattered against the roof, a cleansing rhythm that washed the tension from the diner. Sarah exhaled, joining Lucas at the window, the lot transforming under the downpour into a glistening sanctuary. Hawk pulled up then, rain sheeting off his helmet, his good ear catching the story in clipped exchanges. The crew gathered inside once more, not as invaders, but kin, sharing sodas and strategies around the counter. Olivia arrived shortly after, her cardigan damp but spirits unbroken, embracing Sarah with a hug that conveyed volumes in silence. Gratitude for defending her nephew's echo, the boy whose plight had reignited her own fight. The afternoon waned into evening, the storm easing to a drizzle that scented the air with renewal. Plans solidified. A midnight ride to the developer's office, documents in hand, backed by Tate's tentative alliance and the full weight of the iron promise. Sarah felt the locket's inscription burn anew. Stand for the silent. A promise weaving through the group like threads of steel. Hawk clapped her shoulder, his rare smile breaking through the scars. You defended one, we defend all. That's the ride. Outside, the rain-slicked chrome gleamed under streetlights, engines idling in anticipation, as the family chosen by fate prepared to confront the corruption head-on. Shadows of the past yielded to the light of unity, promising a dawn where justice, long deferred, would finally roll in. If this chapter's tension is gripping you, smash that like button. It helps spread these stories of quiet courage far and wide. The moon hung low over the desert like a silver medallion, casting ethereal glows on the rain-slicked roads that snaked toward the outskirts of town. The air after the storm carried a crisp bite, laced with the earthy scent of wet sagebrush and the faint ozone tang that lingered from thunder's retreat. Engines idled in a loose formation at the edge of the highway diner's lot, their low growls harmonizing into a symphony of restrained power. Harleys and a few custom choppers, chrome accents glinting under the sporadic flicker of passing headlights. Hawk adjusted his gloves, the leather creaking softly against his scarred knuckles, his good ear attuned to the subtle shifts in the group's rhythm. 20 riders strong now, swelled by word-of-mouth calls to distant chapters of the Iron Promise, they formed a convoy born of whispers and unbreakable bonds. Sarah rode pillion behind Lucas, her arms wrapped around his waist for stability, the wind whipping through her ponytail as they rolled out. The diner's lights faded in the rear view, a beacon left behind but etched in her resolve. She changed into borrowed jeans and a spare jacket from Grace, the fabric carrying the faint scent of motor oil and wild roads, symbols of the family she'd stumbled into. Ethan and his mother were secured in the cabin, Olivia staying with them, her signing hands a bridge of comfort across the silence. But the locket at Sarah's throat thrummed with urgency, her brother's promise intertwining with the club's creed: stand for the voiceless, ride for the forgotten. Tonight, that meant storming the gates of Harlan Development's local outpost, a squat office building masquerading as progress amid the scrubland. The convoy moved like a shadow, headlights dimmed to slits, navigating back roads that avoided the sheriff's patrols. Tate's cruiser had peeled away hours earlier, his parting nod to Hawk a fragile truce. He'd radioed ahead with a bogus detour for any responding units, buying them time. But trust in a man teetering on redemption's edge was a gamble, one Hawk weighed with the gravity of past betrayals. Eyes sharp, he murmured into the comms, his voice gravel over the static. We go in quiet, get the originals, expose the forgeries. No heroes tonight, just truth. The response came in affirmatives, a chorus of loyalty that echoed the oaths sworn in smoke-filled garages and starlit camps. As they crested a rise, the office loomed, a single-story fortress of glass and steel, its parking lot empty, save for a few sedans under sodium lamps that buzzed like watchful insects. Floodlights swept the perimeter lazily, but the real security was inside. Harlan's enforcers, the same roughnecks from the diner, now backed by private muscle in ill-fitting uniforms. The lead car, a hulking SUV, sat sentinel at the gate, its engine humming idly. Hawk signaled a halt a quarter-mile out, the bikes fanning into concealment among the boulders, dust settling like a veil. Lucas dismounted first, helping Sarah down with a steadying hand. "You sure about this?" he asked, his prosthetic leg grounding him against the uneven terrain. Sarah met his gaze, the moonlight etching determination on her face. "For Ethan, for all the ones we couldn't save." Her words carried the weight of her brother's ghost, the foster shadows that had taught her silence's cost. Benjamin had mapped the layout via a hurried sketch, vault in the back, files on land claims stacked like ammunition. A small team would breach: Hawk, Lucas, Grace, her medical bag a cover for tools, and Sarah, her county knowledge guiding the hunt. The rest would hold the perimeter, a visible wall if things turned. They slipped forward on foot, the crunch of gravel muffled by the night's hush, hearts pounding in sync with the distant coyote calls. The gate yielded to a quick cut from Grace's kit, wires snipped with surgical precision. Inside the fence, the air grew heavier, scented with printer ink and stale ambition, the odor of deals sealed in dim rooms. They hugged the shadows, reaching the side door where a lone guard dozed, radio crackling softly. Hawk moved like a spectre, a gentle chokehold dropping the man without a sound, binding him with zip ties from his vest. "Rest easy," Hawk whispered, the mercy a nod to his own code. No unnecessary scars. The office interior was a labyrinth of cubicles under harsh fluorescence, files humming in cabinets like secrets begging release. Sarah's hands flew to the locks, her memory of Benjamin's descriptions unlocking drawers with practiced ease. Papers spilled out, deeds forged with sloppy signatures, emails chaining Tate's involvement to Harlan's directives, notes on incentives for families like Ethan's to vanish. Grace snapped photos on a burner phone, her nurse's steadiness unflinching, while Lucas stood watch, his bulk a silent deterrent. But as Hawk rifled the vault, a floorboard creaked in the hall. The enforcers, alerted by some glitch in Tate's diversion. Footsteps echoed, heavy and purposeful, the leader's voice booming from the corridor. "Who's there? This is private property!" Shadows lengthened as flashlights pierced the gloom, pinning the team in stark relief. Sarah froze, a stack of documents clutched to her chest, the air electric with confrontation. Hawk stepped forward, hands raised but eyes like flint. "We're here for the truth. You know it's rotten. Walk away or join the ones who'll answer for it." The men hesitated, their earlier bravado wilting under the weight of exposure. Faces they'd bullied now armed with proof, backed by the unseen convoy's rumble growing outside. Tension coiled, the room thick with the scent of sweat and impending fracture. The leader lunged for the alarm, but Lucas intercepted, a firm grip on his arm twisting just enough to disarm without harm, vestiges of force suggesting restraint, not rage. "Enough!" Lucas growled, the word abridged to de-escalation. One enforcer, younger, eyes flickering with doubt, dropped his stance. "I got a kid too. This ain't right." The admission cracked the facade, murmurs rippling as the group disarmed, the fight draining like storm water into sand. Outside, the full convoy rolled in, engines a thunderous arrival that flooded the lot without aggression. Bikes circling protectively, riders dismounting to form a human barrier. Tate arrived then, lights flashing but sirens silent, his cruiser blocking the road. He approached Hawk warily, rain from earlier still beading on his hat. "Got your backs," he said, voice rough with newfound conviction. "Called the state boys. Clean ones. Harlan's done." The documents, now bagged and secure, passed hands, sealing the shift from corruption to accountability. As dawn's first light crept over the horizon, painting the office in soft pinks, Sarah exhaled into the cooling air, the locket's promise fulfilled in the quiet victory. The enforcers were led away, not in chains, but with warnings that carried the weight of exposure. Hawk clapped Tate's shoulder, a silent oath exchanged, redemption's path open for the sheriff. Woven into the iron promises tapestry, the convoy reformed, heading back toward the diner and the cabin, where Ethan waited, his silent world a little safer. But whispers of Harlan's higher chains lingered, a final shadow promising one more ride. Loyalty's engine roared on, carrying them through the miles, where chosen family turned the tide against the dark. The first light of dawn crept across the desert like a hesitant promise, gilding the edges of the convoy's chrome as they rolled back toward the highway diner. Engines thrummed in a steady cadence, the air crisp with the scent of damp earth and exhaust, carrying the group through canyons that whispered of secrets unearthed. Hawk led the pack, his Harley cutting the wind with purposeful grace, the iron promise patch on his vest, catching fleeting sunbeams like a badge of oaths renewed. Behind him, Sarah clung to Lucas's bike, the vibration traveling up her spine, syncing with the pulse of resolve that had reshaped her world in a single night. The documents from the raid, proof of forgeries, bribes, and coerced silences, rested secure in a saddlebag, their weight a tangible shift from shadow to substance. The diner emerged on the horizon, its neon sign flickering to life under the rising sun, a humble sentinel bathed in golden hues. Riders peeled off one by one, parking in the lot that had become sacred ground, boots crunching on gravel still slick from the storm. Inside, the air held the comforting aroma of fresh coffee brewing, mingling with the faint metallic tang of rain-kissed leather as the group filed in. Grace was already there, her medical bag unpacked on a booth table, sharing quiet updates with Olivia, who signed fluidly to the empty air as if practicing for the boy they'd soon reunite with. Ethan and his mother waited at the cabin, a short ride away, their fragile sanctuary now fortified by the unbreakable circle of this chosen kin. Hawk dismounted last, his good ear catching the subtle hush that fell as Tate's cruiser pulled up behind them. The sheriff stepped out, his uniform rumpled from a night of fractured loyalties, eyes shadowed but clearer than before. He'd followed at a distance, Radio silent after alerting state investigators, clean agents untainted by Harlan's reach. "It's done," Tate said, voice rough as he joined the counter, accepting a mug from Sarah with a nod that spoke volumes. "State's raiding the head office up north. Your papers sealed it. Emails, ledgers, the works. Harlan's CEO's spilling already, naming names to cut a deal." The words landed like rain on arid soil, washing away the grime of corruption that had choked the town for years. Sarah leaned against the counter, the locket at her throat warming as if her brother's spirit approved. She'd glimpsed Tate's redemption in the office shadows, a man reclaiming his father's forgotten vow amid the storm. Now, in the diner's soft morning light, it bloomed fully, the sheriff outlining how the land plot would revert to Ethan's family, debts erased under new scrutiny, the pipeline dreams shattered by exposed greed. "You gave me a way out," Tate admitted to Hawk, his gaze steady. "Reminds me of Dad's stories, folks like you riding in when the law bent wrong." Hawk clasped his forearm, a silent seal on the alliance, the scars on their hands mirroring battles overcome. But closure demanded one final thread untangled. Whispers from the raid had revealed Harlan's higher chains, a network of investors, faceless suits in city towers, pulling strings from afar. As the bikers gathered around scarred tables, plates of eggs and toast passing hands in communal rhythm, Lucas pulled up a map on his phone, routes to the state capital, where a hearing loomed to bury the scheme for good. "We ride tomorrow," Hawk decided, his voice gravel-warm, eyes sweeping the room. "Not for fight, but presence. Show 'em the forgotten don't fade." Nods rippled through the group, veterans and healers alike, their loyalty a tapestry woven from losses shared. Hawk's squad, Sarah's brother, Olivia's son, Ethan's father, all echoes converging in this moment. Sarah felt the pull, the diner's walls no longer confining but launching pad. She'd defended a boy in silence, igniting a fire that scorched corruption's roots. Now, as Grace recounted the mother's recovery, fever broken, hope rekindled, Sarah signed a simple family to Olivia, the gesture bridging her own buried skills, learned in foster nights of quiet rebellion. The older woman smiled, pulling her into an embrace that smelled of antiseptic and sage, a bond forged without words. By midday, the convoy reformed for the cabin run, engines roaring to life under a sky of unmarred blue. Ethan waited on the porch, his small frame straight in the borrowed jacket, eyes lighting as the bikes crested the hill. His mother, propped in a chair with Grace's aid, waved weakly, the color returning to her cheeks like dawn to the desert. Sarah dismounted first, kneeling to sign home, her hands steady, the boy's nod a silent victory. He hugged her fiercely, the crumpled napkin from that fateful night tucked in his pocket like a talisman. Hawk watched from his bike, the scene stirring his own ghosts, the blast's roar fading against this quiet triumph. The afternoon unfolded in the cabin's shaded yard, stories shared over lemonade and the hum of generators. Tate arrived with official papers, clear title to the land, protections against future grabs, his badge now a tool for mending, not breaking. As the sun dipped, casting long shadows across the scrub, the group circled for farewells, promises exchanged like handshakes sealed in chrome. "This ride's yours too," Hawk told Sarah, offering her a spare vest with the Iron Promise emblem. She accepted, the leather heavy with legacy, her locket's inscription complete. "Stand for the silent, honored in action." They rode out as dusk painted the sky in purples and golds, the diner a glowing anchor in the rear view. Harlan's empire crumbled in headlines that would spread like road dust. Justice poetic, won through unity's unyielding weight. Sarah glanced back at the cabin lights, Ethan waving from the porch, his world no longer voiceless. The engine's thrum carried her forward, into a family chosen, where old scars mended into strength, and promises endured beyond the horizon. Thank you for riding along on this journey of quiet courage and unbreakable bonds. If these stories of redemption touch your heart, hit that subscribe button and join our family. We've got more tales waiting on the road ahead.